Accrochez votre ceinture, vous êtes sur Retro Game Future.
Bonjour à vous, joyeux joueurs du 21e siècle, et bienvenue dans cette vidéo découverte de The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe sur PlayStation 5, un jeu qui est sorti le jeudi 19 septembre, et en fait c'est une version améliorée d'un jeu qui était sorti à l'origine en 2013 sur PC et sur Mac, qui a mis beaucoup de temps à arriver sur console, et d'ailleurs d'abord en version digitale, et enfin, c'est sorti en version physique, donc la semaine dernière. Et voilà, c'est un jeu qui est réputé, un véritable OVNI, un jeu narratif où en fait on va incarner Stanley dans ce que j'ai compris, parce que j'ai vu assez peu de choses, dans des bureaux, on va se balader dans une entreprise, et on va être guidé par un narrateur, et en fait on aura le choix de l'écouter ou de ne pas l'écouter. Et tout ça, ça va influencer apparemment donc l'histoire. Allez, on va découvrir ça. Donc sachant bien sûr que c'est un jeu que j'ai installé hors ligne, comme vous le savez, pour garantir une expérience 100% physique. Derrière la boîte, ils disent qu'il faut avoir 5 Go et mon installation fait 5,74 Go, donc un petit peu au-dessus. Voilà. Donc apparemment l'écriture elle est vraiment top moumoute. Alors, choose a screen. Alors voilà, donc là on va pouvoir choisir la langue, c'est bien parce qu'il y a toutes les langues qui s'affichent à l'écran. Donc français. Ah, on peut mettre sous-titres ou pas sous-titres? Alors attends. Si je veux mettre les sous-titres, je fais comment? Français. Ah voilà, et français, d'accord. C'était la voix, et après pour... Pas super bien fait, hein. Elle est confirmée. Avez-vous déjà joué à The Stanley Parable? Bah non. Déplacer le curseur jusqu'à ce que l'ordinateur soit à peine visible, c'est bien. Entrée l'heure actuelle. Alors, je tourne à quelle heure là? C'est 14 h. Attends. Ah oui, on est en PM. Donc, là, moi je tourne, ça doit être à peu près dans ces eaux-là. 2h10. Les paramètres d'accessibilité sont accessibles depuis le menu principal. Alors, moi j'étais un petit coup d'œil quand même dans les paramètres, vite fait. Bon, ils vont nous expliquer après les commandes, hein, mais je pense que ça va être assez simple. S'accomplir L2, et voilà, en fait, voilà, tout c'est tout. Voilà, on va juste se diriger. Hein. Allez, commencez le jeu. Un temps de chargement.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427.
Employé 427.
Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
Et il est dans sa routine, il est content.
And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget.
Ah, c'est pareil, j'aime pas qu'on brise ma routine, moi.
When he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened. This complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Ah, et là, c'est à moi de jouer. Donc on est en 60 images par seconde. Et le jeu, ouais, il est propre. Hein. Alors par contre, il n'y a pas de bruit de pas.
All of his co-workers were gone.
C'est dommage.
What did it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Alors pour le moment, on va quand même suivre les instructions. Enfin, si je trouve la salle de réunion, bien sûr. Ah, c'est dommage, ça manque de bruit de pas, parce qu'en plus, on avance très très vite. Ça fait... Tu vois, j'aurais aimé qu'on entende vraiment bien les bruits de pas, et puis que la caméra bouge un petit peu.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Ah voilà, donc là, je pourrais très bien écouter ou ne pas l'écouter. Qu'est-ce que je fais? Allez, on va l'écouter, pour commencer. Mais je pense que Stanley s'est planté de jour, en fait. Hein. Il a une nuit difficile et il a oublié qu'on était dimanche.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Allez.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Il est où le bureau du chef? Je me rappelle plus. Ah, il est là.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this.
Là, on entend les bruits de pas, là.
What secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of
28-45.
course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
Regarde, on entend les bruits des pas, là. Et par contre, il fait des grands pas. C'est bizarre. Allez, on va taper le code. Pour le moment, on va suivre le narrateur.
Stanley just sat around twiddling his... Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
Ah! Et petit temps de chargement, dis donc.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Il fait des très
Stanley
grands
walked
pas. Hein.
straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Caméra.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing. This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly? No. He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Voilà, j'ai pas trop le choix, hein. À moins que je reste sans rien faire. Ah, aussi je fais on au contraire. Je vais faire on, tiens.
Oh, Stanley, you didn't just activate the controls, did you? After they kept you enslaved all these years, you go and you try to take control of the machine for yourself. Is that what you wanted? Control? Oh, Stanley, I applaud your effort, I really do. But you need to understand, there's only so much that machine can do. You were supposed to let it go, turn the controls off, and leave. If you want to throw my story off track, you're going to have to do much better than that. I'm afraid you don't have nearly the power you think you do. For example, and I believe you'll find this pertinent, Stanley suddenly realized he had just initiated the network's emergency detonation system. In the event that this machine is activated without proper DNA identification, nuclear detonators are said to explode, eliminating the entire complex. How long until detonation then? Let's say...
Il va y avoir un compte à rebours là.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Ah, now this is making things a
Alors,
little more fun, isn't it?
peut-être que je me barre, non?
It's your time to shine. You are the star. It's your story now. Shape it to your heart's desires. Oh, this is much better than what I had in mind. What a shame we have so little time left to enjoy it. Mere moments until the bomb goes off. But what precious moments each one of them is. More time to
quelque chose là ou
talk
bien?
about you, about me,
4.
where we're going.
C'est quoi ça?
All this means, I barely know where to start.
Je sais pas ce que c'est que ces trucs-là.
You'd like to know where your co-workers are? A moment of solace before you're obliterated?
4.
All right, I'm in a good mood. You're gonna die anyway. I'll tell you exactly what happened to them. I erased them. I turned off the machine. I set you free.
Là, il y a 5.
Of course, that was merely in this instance of the story. Sometimes when I tell it, I simply let you sit there in your office forever, pushing buttons endlessly and then dying alone. Other times,
Ah
I
merde,
let the
ça
office
s'est fermé.
sink into the ground,
Alors,
swallowing
attends.
everyone inside, or I
Un.
let it burn to a crisp. I have to say this, though, this version of events has been rather amusing. Watching you try to make sense of everything and take back the control wrested away from you, it's quite rich. I almost hate to see it go. But I'm sure whatever I come up with on the next go-around will be even better.
Alors,
My goodness, only 34 seconds left. But I'm enjoying this so much. You know what? To hell with it. I'm going to put some extra time on the clock. Why not? These are precious additional seconds, Stanley. Time doesn't grow on trees. Oh dear me.
parce que là on voit un code là, 01 42.
You have no idea where you're going or what you're supposed to be doing right now. Or did you just assume when you saw that timer
Si je trouvais un 0,
something in this room was capable of turning it off? I mean, look at you. Running from button to button, screen to screen, clicking on every little thing in this room. These numbered buttons, no, these colored ones.
Ne prenez pas
Or
les
maybe this
colorés.
big red button, or this door.
Ou cette porte.
Everything,
Quelle
anything,
porte?
Something here will save me. Why would you think that, Stanley? That this video game can be beaten? One solved? Do you have any idea what your purpose in this place is?
Incorrect.
Stanley, you're in for quite a disappointment. But here's a spoiler for you. That timer isn't a catalyst to keep the action moving along. It's just seconds ticking away to your death. You're only still playing instead of watching a cutscene because I want to watch you for every moment that you're powerless. To see you made humble. This is not a challenge. It's a tragedy. You wanted to control this
Reste combien de temps?
That's fine. But I'm going
Il y a
to
une trentaine de
destroy
secondes.
it first, so you can't. Take a look at the clock, Stanley. That's 30 seconds you have left to struggle. 30 seconds until a big boom and then
Merde.
nothing. No ending here, just you being blown to pieces. Will you cling desperately to your frail life, or will you let it go peacefully? Another choice. Make it count, or don't. It's all the same to me, all a part of the joke. And believe me, I will be laughing at every second of your inevitable life from the moment we fade in until the moment I say, happily
Allez.
ever up.
Donc je sais pas s'il fallait faire un truc. Est-ce que ça va recommencer? Ah, ça recommence. Ça recommence. Ok.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors,
Tiens, je vais le
he
faire
entered
chier.
the door and this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Ça, c'est la salle de pause.
Yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
Non. Je vais le faire chier. Je vais le faire chier.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
Pas trop le choix. Allez.
That's her, Stanley.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about your day.
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here.
Tiens. Je l'écoute toujours pas. Ah.
But you're in my story now.
Il m'a empêché. Ok, allez. Qu'est-ce que tu veux me montrer?
This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley. Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence.
Ah, il veut que j'appuie sur triangle. Je vais faire autre chose, je vais faire croix. Rond. Carré. Bon, je suis obligé de faire triangle.
Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life.
Alors, il veut que je fasse droite, je vais faire gauche. Bas, haut, non, allez, je vais faire droite, pas le choix.
But in his mind, he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful. And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him.
Alors, rond, croix, non, triangle. Bon, je suis obligé de faire carré.
And so he began to fantasize about his own job. First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly. So, he went further. He imagined that he came to two open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold.
Pas le choix, je suis obligé de faire droite.
As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable.
Je suis obligé de faire carré.
It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
Je vais faire le contraire. Hop, tiens.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself?
Ça va recommencer au début là.
How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time.
Allez, ça va recommencer.
And I tried again.
Veuillez mourir.
Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again. And Stanley pushed a button. And I tried.
Ok. Donc ils vont me remettre au début, je pense. Hein. Voilà. Au début encore. Allez, c'est reparti. C'est un jour sans fin.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Allez, de 7, on va le suivre là, quand même, au début.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief,
J'avance vite, hein.
Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs.
Où est-ce que je descends là? Putain, je descends quand même, je vais être chiant. Je vais être chiant. Ah, je suis têtu, moi.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations.
Ah, en fait, je tourne en boucle.
For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down?
Ah,
Why
oui.
did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar.
Je tourne
Were
en
they
rond.
simply repeating?
Attends.
No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real.
C'est juste dans l'autre
At
sens.
last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself.
Et savoir comment c'est. Faut vraiment que je l'écoute en fait. Hein.
This dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Ah non. Je suis toujours là.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Bon bah je me fais punir hein. À chaque fois que je l'écoute pas.
This is the story of a woman.
Ah c'est pas fini encore.
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Allez, c'est reparti. Bon, on va de suite l'écouter vraiment.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Et on va rentrer le
Stepping into
code.
his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life.
En plus que c'était...
What could it mean? Stanley wondered aloud to nobody. He began wildly tearing through papers on the boss's desk,
Vas-y, je suis tapé
pulling
n'importe quoi.
books off the shelf, looking behind paintings, desperate for clues to his situation. But his attention was caught by a keypad behind the boss's desk. What could its purpose be? In fact, this keypad guarded the terrible secret that lay buried below his feet. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret pin number,
2845, c'est vrai.
But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this. Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
Ah, attends. Et là? Non, y a rien. On va quand même un petit peu suivre le narrateur parce que sinon c'est vrai qu'après il nous bloque assez vite. Et vu qu'il est très très bavard, après bon bah ouais, on voit pas grand chose quoi. Enfin c'est marrant aussi, hein, c'est des fins alternatives en fait.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out? Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the
Le 601, il s'était fait virer.
The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing. This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly? No, he refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! It was unthinkable, wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions.
Donc on va le désactiver cette fois-ci.
Sad or content. Walking, eating,
Parce qu'après il y a peut-être un truc à faire avec les boutons. Mais bon.
And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the control. Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes! He had won! He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, Even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Il va se passer quelque chose là. Ah d'accord. Ok, donc si tu suis le narrateur, tu as la fin la plus simple. Ok. Donc le but, c'est clairement de ne pas le suivre. Ah mais attends. Ah mais là, il n'y a plus de narrateur. Ah ouh, attends, le téléphone sonne. C'est pas fini, c'est pas fini. Il est où le téléphone? Attends, c'est lui là ou pas? J'entends un téléphone. Attends, c'est ce téléphone ou pas? Ah, voilà.
Good morning. Thank you for contacting the Future Happiness Foundation. We are confirming your shipment of 1,327 cardboard boxes to your place of work. Can you verify that this is correct?
Mais j'ai pas de sous-titres là.
Excellent. Your order will arrive shortly. Thank you again for contacting the Future Happiness Foundation.
D'accord. C'était la fondation de la joie. Là, j'ai plus le narrateur. Alors, est-ce que...
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Alors, est-ce que c'est normal que j'avais pas le narrateur au début? Ouais, le narrateur ne me parle plus, là. Ah, c'est vraiment curieux comme jeu, hein.
Yet there was not a single person here either.
Il parle
Feeling a
par
wave of
intermittence.
disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Hoping he might have coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Et 28:45.
The moment he entered his manager's office, Stanley froze in his tracks. Not a living soul anywhere. Could he really be all alone? This was too much. Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music.
Ah, mais j'espère qu'elle n'est pas sous licence, votre musique, là.
Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
Est-ce que je peux monter? Non, je suis obligé de descendre. Ah, c'est quand même bizarre que le début, qu'il n'y avait pas le narrateur, alors... Certainement que c'est normal, parce que c'est vrai que le téléphone sonnait en même temps.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
C'est vraiment un jour sans fin. Hein.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out? Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing. This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
Donc je pense qu'il va falloir qu'on active l'ordinateur là. Et il faut que je trouve avant la solution, il doit y avoir un code. C'est sûr qu'il y a un code pour annuler la mise en feu. Voilà. Donc avant de l'activer, parce que je vais l'activer, il faut que je réfléchisse.
All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery
Est-ce qu'il faut que je fasse 28-45 sinon parce que les boutons, j'ai quoi comme bouton là?
He would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Le problème, c'est qu'il y a plein de trucs qui sont pas activés tant que j'aurai pas branché le machin et après, je vais avoir le décompte. « 0521 ». Parce que j'ai plein de codes là. 0142. Et c'est bizarre, en fait, cet escalier là. Je me dis que cet escalier là qui mène au bouton 4, ça doit servir à quelque chose. Ce 4. Ça, j'ai le 5. J'ai le 5 et j'ai le 4. J'ai le 5 et le 4. Alors, fais voir si j'appuie sur le 5 là, peut-être. Là, il se passe rien. J'ai le 5, j'ai le 4. Là, j'ai le 3. Alors, si je trouve le 1 et le 2. 1, 2. Ok. 1, 2. J'ai le 3 qui est là-bas. Donc, ouais, il faut peut-être seulement que je fasse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hein. Donc, 1, 2. Non, ça c'est le 5, donc le 3 il est là-bas. Putain, il est où le 3? Attends. Non, 1, 2. Ah oui, non, le 3 il était là-bas. Il était caché là-bas, là. Là, ouais. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On va essayer de faire ça. Et sinon, après les codes, 0142. J'ai pas de 0. J'ai pas trouvé de bouton 0. Donc je pense pas qu'il faut rentrer... On va tenter un 2, 3, 4, 5. Hein. Là j'ai 0,521. Alors à moins qu'il faut peut-être créer les codes, faire 521. C'est dommage qu'il n'y ait pas de 0. S'il y avait un 0, je tenterais de taper les codes qui est sur les murs, mais je vois pas de 0. Je vois le 2, je vois le 1. S'il y avait un 0, je les tenterais les codes là. Parce que je me dis, ils ont certainement des significations, ces codes-là, non? Bon, on va tenter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On va voir. Attends, là, il y en a pas. Attends, il y en a peut-être là, non? Non. Bon. Tentons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Là, j'ai pas sinon une astuce là qui apparaîtrait, non?
When at last he found the source
Allez,
of the room's
on.
power. Oh, Stanley, you didn't just activate the
Si,
control,
eh oui,
did you?
c'est ce que j'ai
After
fait.
they kept you enslaved all these years, you go and you try to take control of the machine for yourself. Is that what you wanted?
Eh oui.
Control?
Est-ce que j'ai un 0 qui apparaîtrait? J'attends que ça s'allume quand même.
Really do. But you need to understand, there's only so much that machine can do. You were supposed to let it go, turn the controls off, and leave. If you want to throw my story off track, you're going to have to do much better than that. I'm afraid you don't have nearly the power you think you do. For example, and I believe you'll find this pertinent, Stanley suddenly realized he had just initiated the network's emergency detonation system. In the event that this machine is activated without proper DNA identification, nuclear detonators are said to explode, eliminating the entire complex. How long until detonation then? Let's say, 2 minutes. Ah, now this is making things a little more fun, isn't it, Stanley?
Que j'ai pas de 0 hein, qui apparaît.
You are the star. It's your story
Allez,
now.
on va tenter donc
Shape
1, 2,
it
3,
to
4,
your
5.
heart's desires.
Allez.
Oh, this
1,
is much better than what I had in mind.
2.
What a shame we have so little time left to enjoy it. Mere moments until the bomb goes off. But what precious
Le
moments
3,
each one of them is.
là.
More time to talk about you, about me, where we're going.
3.
What all this means. I barely know where to start.
Le 4 là-haut.
What's that? You'd like to know where your co-workers are? A moment of solace before you're obliterated? All right, I'm in a good mood.
Et après le 5.
Anyway, I'll tell you
Et si c'est pas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, c'est peut-être les codes qui sont sur les murs.
I turned off the machine to set you
Voilà.
free. Of course, that was merely in this instance of the story. Sometimes when I tell it, I simply let you sit there in your office forever, pushing buttons endlessly and then die.
5. Non, il se passe rien. Merde.
Other times,
Ok,
I let the
alors.
sink into the ground,
Est-ce qu'il faut que je fasse
swallowing
142?
everyone inside, or I let it burn to a crisp.
On va tenter 142, hein, mais...
Say this, though, this version
là, il s'est rien passé, hein.
rather amusing. Watching you try to make sense
Et là, c'est quoi le 1, là, voilà? Je peux rien faire, là.
wrested away from you, it's quite rich. I almost hate to see it go.
Incorrect. Ah, attends, 4. Ah, attends, ah, il me dit 4. Ouh, attends, je viens de comprendre. 4, et après, j'appuie sur le bouton.
Only 34
Ok, ok.
seconds left.
Ça n'a rien à voir.
But I'm enjoying this so much. You know what? To hell with
Faut
it.
que j'appuie sur
I'm
4.
going to put some extra time on the
Et après, j'appuie sur le bouton là-bas.
These are precious additional seconds, Stanley. Time doesn't grow on trees.
Et là, si j'appuie sur le 4,
Stanley.
ici...
Is it that you have no idea
Attends,
where
c'est
you're
où?
going or what you're
C'est pas là que j'ai vu?
supposed to be doing right
Ah ouais,
now?
là. 4.
Or did you just assume when you saw that
Non.
timer that something in this room was capable of turning it off? I mean, look at you.
Ah, merde!
From button
Là, il
to
me dit
button,
5.
screen
Merde,
to
putain.
screen, clicking on every little thing in this room. These numbered buttons, no.
Attendez, je vais faire 5.
Or maybe this big red button. Or this
Ah, j'ai bien appuyé, là.
door. Everything, anything.
5.
Something here will save me. Why would you think that, Stanley? That this video game can be beaten? Won? Solved?
Merde!
Any idea
2.
what your purpose in this
Attends.
place is? But you
Putain,
really
merde.
believe there's an
Il était où le 2, là-bas?
How many times will you replay this bit, looking
Ça va
desperately
être chaud,
for a
hein.
solution? 10, 100, 1000?
Alors,
I look
là, je fais
forward to
2.
finding out and to watching the
Après.
bomb go off each time you
Là, je vois 2 encore.
Just you
Est-ce qu'il
and
faut que
me.
j'appuie sur un autre bouton ou je sais pas, en fait.
Iron metal over and over and over for all of eternity.
Parce que là, là, si je fais ça,
Stanley died again.
voilà. Après,
And Stanley died again.
ça va être chaud, hein.
And Stanley died again.
Goodbye employé. Merde. Là, de cette, j'ai pas compris.
That's 30 seconds you have left to struggle.
Je sais pas ce qu'il faut faire.
Seconds until a big boom and then nothing.
Merde.
No ending here. Just you being blown to pieces. Will you cling desperately to your frail life? Or will you let
Ah, je sais pas ce qu'il faut faire, là.
Another choice.
Et si je me mets là-bas?
Or don't. It's all the same to me. All a part of the journey.
On va se mettre là,
And
sait-on
believe
jamais.
me, I will be laughing at every second of your inevitable life.
Attends, et si je fais off?
Until the moment I say,
Ah, je peux plus.
happily ever after.
Merde. Ah, putain. Il y a un truc avec les codes, mais alors là, franchement, je sais pas. Là, je sais pas. Parce que donc, faut pas faire 2, 3, 4, 5. Après, c'est vrai que t'as des boutons de partout. Qu'est-ce que je fais? Ça fait combien de temps que je joue à 40 minutes? Presque 50 minutes, ouais, 50 minutes. Allez, on va tenter une dernière fois.
The meeting room. Yes, that's where everyone would be.
Toute dernière fois.
Stanley just needed to get to the meeting room, and from then on, he would never be alone ever
Ah,
again.
attends, est-ce que... Parce que moi, je suis le 427. Mais y a pas... Ouais, je peux pas faire 427 là-bas. Allez. On suit le narrateur.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Alors c'est dommage qu'il n'y ait pas quand même un système
There was not a single person
de sauvegarde.
over. Feeling
Parce que j'avoue que de refaire tout le trajet et l'écouter parler là pendant 2 heures,
Stanley walked upstairs to his
c'est un peu fatigant.
boss's office. Okay, I think we all know the drill by now. Blah,
Ah, on va
blah,
attendre un petit peu.
secrets, the keypad. Stanley pushes some buttons. Oh, hey,
Ah!
look, it's a new passageway.
Ah, il accélère le truc quand même. Ah, il accélère. Donc ça change quand même. Ça change. Ah bah c'est bien ça. Ah, si vous pouvez me faire des petites ellipses, ça serait pas mal.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read
Ah, regarde, escape.
Control Facility.
Putain, ça change.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
Putain, ça change quand même, tu
The door
vois.
behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn
No,
around
no, no.
and get back on track. At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Ah bah, j'avais fait de continuer. En fait, les codes, c'est peut-être rien. Hein. C'est juste pour te mettre la tête à l'envers. Oula. Ah oui, effectivement, là, la chute doit faire mal, peut-être, non? Ah non, ça va. Tout va bien.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is.
Ah oui, apparemment, je vais faire écraser. Hein.
Was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a
Ah non!
And so
Je veux pas être une
he
crêpe.
willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Apparemment, attends, je me baisse. Sait-on jamais? Sur un malentendu. Non, ça va. Ah.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator.
Oh.
As Stanley
Oui, j'ai plus
led
beaucoup de
helplessly
batterie.
into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Mais non. Oh là.
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish? When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
Remerciement. Marrant. Comme un musée en fait. Un musée du jeu. Mon bureau. Bureau 427. Ah là, il y a un ascenseur. Tiens, ça c'est la fin que j'ai fait là, tout à l'heure. Alors, est-ce que je vais là ou est-ce que je vais là? Ah, je sais pas en fait. C'est l'ascenseur, mais ouais, c'est encore le musée. Alors.
Oh, look at these two. How they wish to destroy one another. How they wish to control one another. How they both wish to be free. Can you see? Can you see how much they need one another? No, perhaps not. Sometimes these things cannot be seen. But listen to me. You can still save these two. You can stop the program before they both fail. Turn off your PlayStation.
Éteignez votre PlayStation.
As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now and it'll be your only true choice. Whatever you do, choose it. Don't let time choose for you. Don't let...
Ah putain. Ah, c'est excellent, n'empêche. Ils vont m'arrêter au début?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Oh, nouveau contenu. Allons-y, hein.
Oh, new content? What does that mean, new content?
Hello, and thank you for playing the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. As you may know, the Stanley Parable was a video game released in 2013 on home computers. After receiving critical and commercial success, it was expanded upon in 2022 with the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, a reimagining of the game for consoles and home computers. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe features exciting new content that broadens and expands the world of the Stanley Parable, delighting audiences the world over. Please, step inside and see what thrilling new adventures await in the Stanley
Donc
Parable.
voilà, effectivement avec le nouveau contenu, je pense qu'on a plus d'embranchements.
This sounds delightful. I'm very excited to see the thrilling new Ultra Deluxe content. Okay, so far it's an elevator. Nothing special yet, but I'm sure it's just the beginning of a mesmerizing adventure. Is it broken? What's going on here? Should we be moving somewhere or... Oh, there we go. All right, finally, at long last, it's on to the new content. I've never been more ready. Let's do it.
Limite, j'aurais pas dû prendre la porte du nouveau contenu pour voir tout ce qu'on peut faire sur l'ancien contenu.
Ultra Deluxe, mostly tedious. It's as if Oh, okay. Let's see the content. Give me the content, Stanley. All right, let's see. It's the jump circle.
Ah, on peut sauter maintenant. D'accord.
Is that it? Surely that's not all the new content. There has to be something else, right? Goodness, another elevator. Stanley, I have to say, initial impressions of this game are not positive. It's just elevators and jumping. Is this what passes for exciting new content? If this is new content, then I could just read you the whole dictionary. There's 20 hours of new content right there. Hell, I could count to 30 trillion. You could put that on the box. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, now with over 1,000 hours of new content. And if... Oh, wait. There's more. Very good. Yes. I knew there had to be something else. Let's see it. I'm ready for whatever it is. That's it? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You see, Stanley? This is what happens when greedy video game developers with no respect for their fan base rush a cheap expansion to market for no reason other than to make an easy dollar. And don't get me started on the level of craftsmanship that's gone into it. In fact, I'm looking right now at the game's trophies, and it's hard to believe one of them actually says, "Test trophy, please ignore." What quality assurance department signed off on this? I'm infuriated and I'm offended, and I intend to find these people on Twitter and hold them personally accountable. It's my fault, Stanley. I built up too much anticipation around the new content, I'm afraid. It could never have lived up to such expectations. If you're still with me, why don't we just reset the game, and we'll try to get back to what the Stanley Parable is really about. No frills, no gimmicks. Just you and me having a great time together like always. What do you say, friend?
Alors, il m'en est au début, et de ce fait... Attends, oh, mais non, ça a changé. C'est pas vraiment le début, ça, encore.
Psst, Stanley, come over here, in the vent.
Ah tiens,
I want to
j'y
show
vais.
you something. Okay, you remember how cheap and unsatisfying the new Ultra Deluxe content turned out to be? Well, it got me thinking about the past, and how much better the Stanley Parable used to be. So I made something special, and tucked it away here where the game's developers won't find it. Just our little secret. Take a look.
Ah, je peux me balader là.
The Memory Zone. It's where I've been storing all my favorite memories so I can relive the peak experiences of my life whenever I want. Experiences like the launch of the Stanley Parable on PC. You see, Stanley, doesn't the Memory Zone remind you of how wonderful Stanley Parable was before it was sullied with a cheap PlayStation port? Remember back in October of 2013, when the game originally launched? Back then, video games had integrity. Back then, it all meant something. Oh, the waste.
Alors, je pourrais aller là, mais on va voir là. Ah non, je peux pas y aller.
And over here is where I keep reviews of the Stanley Parable. Like this stunning triumph of games journalism, 10 out of 10 from Destructoid.com. James Stephanie Sterling writes, and I quote, "Where so many games that aspire to be more than games end up less than any form of art, Stanley Parable strives and then succeeds to be every game ever created." Did you hear that, Stanley? Every game ever created. That's how grand and all-encompassing the original Stanley Parable was. It was literally every game ever created. It was Skyrim, it was Persona 3, it was all of them, and now it's nothing. It's no games at all. It isn't even the Stanley Parable anymore. It's just a husk now. A lifeless husk with an hour of new elevator content.
Allez, j'avance encore un petit peu, il va falloir que j'arrête. Personne de l'année.
Here's another moving passage, this time from GameSpot.com. The Stanley Parable is both a richly stimulating commentary on the nature of choice in games and one that offers some of the most enjoyable, surprising, and rewarding choices I've ever been confronted with in a game. 9 out of 10. Don't you get it, Stanley? The game was perfect. It didn't need anything else. It didn't need new content. All they had to do was transport it in pristine condition along to the PlayStation, boom, done. And they couldn't even do that. Couldn't resist the urge to go meddling with a beloved franchise. These were simpler times, Stanley. But I wouldn't give to go back to have it all over again. Wait, hang on. I don't recall this part of the memory zone before. What's this? What's down here? Oh no, oh God, no, Stanley. It's a collection of reviews from Pressurized Gas, the extremely popular online storefront for computer games. I haven't looked at these in years. I can't even imagine what's been collecting down here. Surely these reviews were glowing as well, weren't they? Honestly, I could not be bothered to play this game to full completion. The narrator is obnoxious
Ah, je sais pas si c'est vrai ça.
funny, with his humor and dialogue proving to be more irritating than
C'est certainement vrai.
Funny.
Donc quelqu'un qui a mis un commentaire sur Steam,
Trying to make a serious work of art.
il a pas aimé.
I suppose I could write up a handful of gags to insert into the Stanley parable, but the game is already such a densely layered web of profound philosophical insights that I can't even imagine where I'd have the room to stick them.
Bon, je pense que je vais arrêter là. C'est vraiment un ovni, hein. Donc je savais que c'était un ovni et c'est complètement ouais, dingue, hein. Ils arrêtent pas de casser le 4e mur. Et voilà, donc il faut savoir qu'on a le jeu Stanley Parable et c'est vrai que quand tu avances dans le jeu, bah, ça débloque. Alors en fait, au début d'ailleurs, il te demande hein, si tu as déjà joué au jeu Stanley Parable. Donc moi j'avais mis non. C'est pour ça qu'au début, j'ai suivi, voilà, on va dire l'histoire, plus ou moins d'ailleurs. Et au bout d'un moment, bah, j'ai débloqué aussi le nouveau contenu. Mais j'ai bien envie de recommencer et de pas tout de suite aller dans le nouveau contenu, parce que c'est vraiment une porte hein, assez vite qui permet d'accéder au nouveau contenu, pour voir vraiment ce qui s'était passé en 2013, parce que c'est vrai que c'est marrant, quoi, parce que rien qu'avec le contenu de 2013, sur le jeu d'origine, bon bah tu vois que c'est voilà, un mélange de Un jour sans fin avec je sais pas quelle avec la 4e dimension quoi. Hein. Donc voilà, tu tentes des trucs, puis quand tu le tentes plusieurs fois, bah ça va quand même modifier l'histoire. Ou si tu passes par d'autres chemins, bon on peut voir qu'on peut être assez vite enfermé par le narrateur, mais il y a ce côté intéressant entre tes actions et le narrateur. Et c'est vrai que c'est rigolo parce que voilà, c'est un jeu et je pense peut-être pas hésiter à aller voir quand même sur des forums à des moments pour voir si tu passes pas à côté d'un truc. Là, par exemple, par rapport à ces codes, à ces boutons, est-ce que tu peux vraiment, est-ce que c'est juste en fait pour te troller, il y a des boutons mais ça sert à rien, ou est-ce que tu peux vraiment arriver à faire quelque chose avec les boutons qui pourrait te permettre d'accéder à quelque chose? Je ne sais pas. Mais on voit que voilà, plus tu joues, plus il y a des choses qui se passent, et je connais pas du tout la durée de vie, c'est quand même un jeu à petit prix, donc je sais pas. Est-ce que tu peux vraiment creuser pendant des heures et des heures et il va se passer quelque chose? Ou est-ce qu'en 3 heures, tu vois, tu arrives à tout voir? Aucune idée. Mais c'est vachement, ouais, c'est vachement original. Hein. Et avec le nouveau contenu, bah là c'est pareil, je pense qu'il faudra vous renseigner pour la durée de vie. Parce que peut-être qu'entre la partie initiale plus ce nouveau contenu, il y a peut-être, je sais pas moi, 7, 8 heures ou peut-être plus heures de jeu. Mais voilà, c'est vraiment, c'est rigolo quoi. Moi j'aime beaucoup. Techniquement, c'est sympa, voilà, sans plus, il n'y a rien d'extraordinaire. Hein. C'est un jeu de toute façon voilà, qui est simple, il n'y a pas de PNJ, il n'y a que toi qui te déplaces dans un monde où il n'y a personne. Mais voilà, 160 images par seconde, c'est pas désagréable pour se déplacer. Alors on a vu qu'il y avait aussi un saut, mais on peut pas sauter quand on veut. Hein. Par exemple là je fais croix là, avec le nouveau contenu. Ah bah pas mal. Donc voilà, quand tu bourrines sur croix, ça te débloque un trophée parce que tu peux pas sauter où tu veux. Ou peut-être qu'en fait c'était un gros troll et en fait tu peux pas sauter quoi. C'est ça en fait. Ce jeu c'est un gros troll, mais c'est marrant quoi. En fait tu ouvres la boîte de Pandore et tu sais pas du tout ce qui va se passer. Et pour ça, bah ouais c'est sympa. Je pense qu'on peut faire confiance aux critiques et effectivement il a eu des très très bonnes notes. Voilà, faut être curieux et faut se laisser embarquer dans cette histoire avec ce narrateur qui est très bavard, hein, si ça vous gêne pas trop, voilà, d'avoir effectivement cette narration ultra poussée, mais quand même avec vos choix qui font un peu bouger tout ça, quoi. Donc c'est assez sympa. Voilà, en tout cas si vous avez bien aimé cette découverte, n'hésitez pas à mettre des petits pouces vers le haut et à vous abonner, et je vous dis à très très bientôt pour d'autres vidéos. Ciao!